Hi everybody, it's Dave from Doctors of Running, and today we're going to be doing a head-to-head battle between the Saucony Endorphin Speed 4 and the Nike Zoom Fly 6. Now on the surface, both of these shoes appear to be relatively similar, but there are some differences that I do think are worth noting. But some of the similarities right off the bat, they are the respective training companions for their super shoes. They both use up-to-date materials and they both give you lively, responsive experiences. But I think the uses for both of these shoes could vary some depending on the runner and what you're looking for. I do want to start off with specifications, looking at the Saucony Endorphin Speed 4. This comes in at 36 millimeters of stack in the heel, 28 millimeters of stack in the forefoot for an 8 millimeter drop platform. This shoe weighs in at 8.2 ounces, 233 grams, men's size 9, 7.2 ounces, 206 grams, women's size 8. This uses a Power Run PB midsole and a nylon plate, so a little bit more of a flexible ride there. And this comes and retails at roughly $170. When we look at the Nike Zoom Fly 6, this one comes in a little bit heavier, but it's still comparable. 8.6 ounces, men's size 9, 244 grams, and women's size 8, also similar, but 7.6 ounces, 215 grams. This uses the Zoom X midsole that you have seen in the Alpha Fly and the Vaporfly, and this does have a carbon plate, but the carbon plate in this one's a little bit more flexible, so it's probably tuned a little bit differently than the plates that we've seen in the Super shoes. And also a little bit more outsole coverage, a little bit more of a training-friendly experience. Same with the Endorphin Speed 4. So I do want to go into the uppers. When we look at the Saucony Endorphin Speed 4, I do think this upper is a little bit softer on the materials, a little bit more airy, and it just feels a little bit nicer on foot, just from a material standpoint. It's very normal dimensions between the heel, midfoot, and the forefoot. It might be slightly wide here, but it does taper off a decent amount. I think the volume is dialed in well, and the tongue is very soft, absorbs the laces. I haven't ever had any issues with any biting from this one. It's a pretty forgiving fit on foot. When we look at the Nike Zoom Fly 6, the Zoom Fly 6 is very snug up front on the toe box, but I will say the forefoot's a little bit wider. The mesh material, it does lock in really well, but it also feels a little bit more synthetic, so not quite as soft and plushy as the Endorphin Speed 4. The tongue has a decent enough padding. I think there's just a little bit of volume issues up front here, but otherwise it locks down well. The heel collar is a little bit more plush. It's definitely more of a training-friendly upper for this series, but both uppers lock down well. If you like having a little bit more of a snug lockdown, the Zoom Fly might agree a little bit more with you. If you want something a little bit more plush and soft, the Endorphin Speed 4 will give that to you. Going into the rides, I do think both of these foams give you a softer experience, but there is a key difference. You have less foam in the Endorphin Speed 4, and you also have a really grippy outsole pattern here as well. And I do think that comes off in the ride. When you land, the geometry is also not as dramatic in this one too. So the heel at first was a little clunky for me, but as it broke in, it did really well. But this is a flexible shoe. You have a little bit more of a natural feeling as you transition through. The geometry isn't super dramatic. You have good traction underfoot that does firm up the ride a little bit, and that moderate stack height, you feel a little bit more grounded. So I feel like the Endorphin Speed 4, although it did do well for training runs and long runs and tempos, I think it really catered to those tempo runs and down where you could do track work and do a little bit of speed work in this and feel really good and snappy. The Nike Zoom Fly 6 really shines on the other end, where the Zoom X is definitely soft and it is noticeable. The 40 millimeters of stack is noticeable compared to the 36 millimeters of stack. And this really shined for long runs, longer tempo runs for me. It can pick up the pace, but I think it just does better with rhythmic efforts. And the geometry is a little bit more noticeable through the forefoot. It is stiffer than Endorphin Speed. It's more flexible than the Super shoes, but it definitely is stiffer than Endorphin Speed. And so this is a shoe that definitely relies on its rhythm and geometry, but it is soft. And I do think traction is decent, but I think you get a little bit more of a grippy experience on the Endorphin Speed 4. So a little bit of faster kind of a feeling shoe on the Endorphin Speed 4, but if you want kind of a plush rhythmic shoe for long runs and just eating up road miles, the Zoom Fly 6 does a really good job there. That is kind of where I land with these two. They're both really good options. Being priced at $170, I do think they both do well for their place in the market, and I do think they are comparable. I think it just depends on what you're looking for as the runner. If I was in a track season, I think I'm looking at Endorphin Speed 4. If I'm in a marathon season, I'm probably looking at the Zoom Fly 6. So it's kind of a draw there. They're both really good. I wish I could have talked more about the Zoom Fly 6. We just got it at the very end of the year when awards were coming out, so I really didn't have much experience in the shoe yet. But there's a couple differences there between the fit of the uppers and the rides of the midsoles that may make you lean one way or the other, but they're both solid shoes. That's our head-to-head battle between the Saucony Endorphin Speed 4 and the Nike Zoom Fly 6.